Hello, thanks for watching this video. I am Hariharan, Senior Enterprise Architect with Aspire Systems. I am going to brief about Aspire SOA Reference Architecture. We simply call it as ASRA. We have been doing enterprise-level integrations for many years for our global customers. Therefore, we understand the difference between point-to-point integration approach and modern service-oriented architecture approach. Based on our experience, we designed enterprise-class SOA reference architecture to help our customers to realize the true benefit of SOA at rapid speed. We also created a SOA framework based on ASRA for Oracle SOA Suite customers. Here is our safe harbor statement. Before I talk about Aspire SOA Reference Architecture, I would like to quickly brief about what is SOA Reference Architecture. As per Open Group Consortium, SOA Reference Architecture is a blueprint for creating effective architecture models and evaluates that periodically during implementation. Reference architecture provides guidelines and options for making the right decisions, implementation approach while adopting SOA at enterprise level. The reference architecture should also encompass building blocks, patterns, and business mappings. Here is our Aspire SOA Reference Architecture. We defined our reference architecture to meet various domain and infrastructure customers and their needs. While defining the reference architecture, we follow the industry's proven guidelines provided by Oracle, Open Group, and IBM. Fundamentally, the entire architecture model is separated as three major layers: consumer layer, SOA layer, infrastructure layer. Let's talk about each layer. Every layer has many blocks. Infrastructure layer has two major blocks. We consider all the internal applications as internal business systems. If the enterprise is interacting with other third-party systems such as partner systems or customer systems, we consider those services or systems as third-party systems. Here, we call as external systems. We also consider to make use of the existing infrastructure tools such as Exchange, FTP, or queue mechanisms. We can use that for the integrations. So we consider that as part of the infrastructure layer tools. The middle layer is basically SOA layer. The SOA layer has many building blocks. In internal systems, exposing as a service will be considered here as internal data services. Any third-party systems consumed from the internal integrations are considered as external data services. The core part of the SOA layer is basically the business service layer or business service block. This is where the data validation, aggregation, and blending is happening. The process layer is basically called as enterprise business process, which works as a workflow engine and orchestration. The process layer basically assembles various business services to execute your business processes. We have to record all the transactions for effective monitoring. Therefore, we included business activity monitoring as part of our reference architecture. Either fault handling or transaction handling are handled by the fault audit log (DBS). In order to support other common services such as fault handling, scheduling, all those things are considered as part of the utility services. The infrastructure components or infrastructure tools are exposed through infrastructure services. Therefore, such services can be reused as much as possible. We separated the transformation and business rules as out of the code for integration. Therefore, we made it as a transformation service block and business rules engine block. The top layer is basically a consumer layer which consumes various services provided by the SOA layer for effective business operations. Aspire SOA Reference Architecture featuring some special characters. We defined this reference architecture to support enterprise SOA implementations. Therefore, the reference architecture is in compliance with enterprise class SOA needs. Multi-layer based architecture helps to decouple the integration as multiple components which help us to reuse the components for various integration needs. Instead of following application-specific schema model, our reference architecture suggested to follow the business canonical schema model. Therefore, we remove the dependency between the application systems. Standards is important here. Therefore, Aspire Enterprise SOA Reference Architecture suggests and follows SOAP, REST, BPL, EDI, HR7, and HR XML-based standards. We separated the automated integration process from the human workflow processes. The inbuilt BAM mechanism helps to monitor all the auditing information, including transaction auditing or fault handling. I'm sure you will love to have this reference architecture as part of your implementation. Let's walk through a small example on how we can apply Aspire's ASRA framework for rapid approach of implementation. Here the business scenario is basically promoting the sales through Amazon sales and fulfillment service. Typically, if we have such integration requirements, we jump into the integration and try to connect the two systems through the integration flow. And of course, we handle the exception as part of the flow. If there is any business requirement, then we will consider in implementing notification as part of the solution. If there is more business requirement, then we also include the auditing flow. We combine this as a composite application solution and deploy it either in Oracle SOA Suite or any other application server or middleware solution. Instead of following this model, we approach a different model based on our ASRA framework. We expose the systems as the data services, either internal data services or external data services. We build the integration business service or enterprise business service and combine the data class services to meet the business integration needs. We separate the exception handling as a separate services. We separate the rules engine as a service. We want to make sure that the data being transferred through the middleware are properly handled. Therefore, we accommodate delivery failure repository and recovery repository services so that we can, even if there is any failure, we can handle that. We separate the entire notification as a two different services, event service and notification service. Therefore, either the success notification or failure notification, we can still use the same notification service and email service. We separate the auditing as a separate service so that we can reuse these services as many number of integrations. On top of that, we create the business process orchestration. Now, we identify that there are certain services we can reuse. Therefore, we already created those services as a pre-built component as part of the ASRA framework. We created those components to support our Oracle SOA Suite implementation. We extend this capability to Microsoft Stock and open source model as well. Therefore, we reduce the development effort by 60% by making use of those services which we already created for our customers. We can reuse these services as many number of customers. Why ASRA framework for Oracle SOA Suite? Because it pre-built a framework of components for Oracle SOA Suite so that customers can quickly jump into the development and implementation. 100% reusable components are provided by the ASRA framework. Therefore, those components can be used in any of the projects to accommodate any business-related changes. How we can accommodate such changes? Because our framework is created based on the data-driven architecture model. Therefore, many configurations are kept in the data model which can be changed, aligned as needed. The entire model helps to reduce development effort up to 60%. That increases the customer's ROI percentage as quickly as possible. What about the Oracle's suggestion? Yes, we have considered the entire reference architecture and defined it based on Oracle's Level 3 SOA maturity standards. And we built it Oracle SOA Suite and Service Bus. As I said, we are extending this to Microsoft Vista and open source model as well. In order to help our implementations much faster speed, we already defined the templates and implementation methodology. To help our customers, we also created a proof of concept ready infrastructure which already have the pre-built components. Therefore, if any customer wants to engage with us, we can quickly start the proof of concept project. I hope that you really enjoy this presentation. If you have more questions, please feel free to contact us at soa@aspire.com. If you are new to SOA and you want to understand the real benefit of SOA model, please use our ROI calculator. Thanks for your interest in understanding Aspire SOA Reference Architecture.